For his first ever interview, I am joined by Coach Chris from CLG. Coach Chris, should I just keep calling you Coach Chris? That would be great. Can I call you Chris? Blurred Limes? What do you go by?
Chris is more than fine. Okay. We can be friends.
We can be friends. Okay. So, Chris, so you have come into a team and an organization that has a very storied history, lots of interesting drama right before you got there, and now you're here, and you have what is many people have tried to tackle, but not been able to do yet, which is make CLG live up to the potential that they have. Right? All puns aside, it's kind of the case, right? So, how upon entering the organization did you feel like, or how do you plan on accomplishing this?
The potential?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, yeah, like you said, CLG has something of an embarrassment in riches as far as talent goes. Fostering that talent really, when I first came in, it was, I guess, Link's last week there, yeah, and all that stuff happened. And just watching those guys and how they responded to that, I have no, worries as far as, talent and things like that go. As far as fostering it, it's just discipline, You've got a bunch of 18, 20-year-old guys who have become famous almost overnight, and they don't know how to handle things like that. Most of them forewent college in order to do this, and they've never had that, structured environment where they have set schedules and take practice time seriously, and just small things like that most people gain when they go to college. You get in that environment away from home where your parents aren't kind of taking care of you anymore. And we're throwing those guys into it, and they're flourishing in it. They really are. And I think that will help instill the discipline in them that will lead to the results as the split goes on.
So you're actually very interesting to me as a figure in the scene now, because I think that you may be the first person to take a coaching role that has, in the LCS at least, that has a traditional sports background behind him. And this is, and in my mind, for me, I'm looking at it as kind of like an interesting experiment. I'm fascinated by how you will pan out, because, it's an interesting idea of how much of the stuff that you learned in that role will be able to transfer over here and how effective that'll be. How do you feel about the things that you've learned in your traditional sports background and translating that over to esports?
It actually is an interesting experiment, and it's been kind of hit or miss as we've been going along, because some things don't transfer nearly as well as I would have expected them to, and some things transfer even better. A lot of the physical stuff that I wanted to do with the guys, they don't have the infrastructure in order to do that in the way that we would do it at the collegiate level, where we have the facilities built into the team. These guys have a gaming house, but they don't have anything set up so that they have gym time there. We have to go to another facility in order to get gym time. We don't have separate office and living spaces, and so those kind of things can kind of blur the lines, as far as treating practice seriously and things like that, when it's also your living space and where you eat. It's hard to separate those kind of things. So it's definitely been different, but on the other hand, the basics and the fundamentals transfer over great. We know how to keep these guys focused, and from a health standpoint, how much time we can get out of them that will be useful time, because at some point the body gets tired and the mind gets tired. You can't work an athlete 12 hours a day and expect them to perform as well in the 12th hour as they would the first or second hour. So a lot of those kind of things transfer over, but like you said, it is a little bit of an experiment, seeing which things work and which things don't. And then for me, quickly adjusting so that I can make sure that they're on the right path. But there's definitely a lot of quick adjustments that have to be made. I'll throw a stretch or a workout at these guys and notice that it may not be as effective as I thought it was going to be. And so the next day you have to move on to something different and find a different way to get the same thing that you want. If you're trying to, let's say you're trying to prevent an injury in a certain body part, something that we may do with football or basketball players may not work for these guys. We may not have the equipment for it. They may not take it as seriously, since they don't grow up doing some of these movements, and they can be a little bit funny. We do glute bridges with the guys, which is basically laying on your back and thrusting your butt up towards the sky. Yeah. come on, 18-year-olds think it's kind of funny if they haven't grown up with it. So it's a lot of things like that, just small adjustments, taking what I do know works and finding a way to apply it to these guys in a way that they'll take seriously.
Sure, and setting aside like the physical aspects of the sports side of coaching, sports has always been my Achilles heel, but I assume that there's a lot of other stuff that you're bringing in to the team in terms of like teamwork and how to approach problems and how to figure out how to solve things. How much of that, I mean, maybe you can even give an example, but how much of that stuff has been transferable, and how effective do you think your sports background has been in helping them accomplish? Because it seems like a lot of the issues they had in the past, people who've looked at a lot of the drama that has come out, might feel like synergy or communication or getting along. Like how effective has your background been in approaching those issues?
That's kind of hard to say after 2 weeks, really, since I've only been here for that short period of time. But listening to the guys when they do interviews, I feel pretty confident that they're open to it and that it is affecting the team in a positive way. Things like I heard Afro say in an interview, I think last week, that the 3-on-3 drills that we do and things like that outside, it really does help them bond as a team. And those are things that are important to any team. You'll see guys like in the NBA, the Cavs this year, their coach canceled a day of practice and had them all go bowling together. Yeah. Things like that are actually important, and it's something that I know the team hasn't done in the past, and we're focused on that. We want to make sure that the silly issues that have come up in the past do not repeat themselves. And part of that is getting the guys to bond together. And that's anyone who's been part of a team, heck, you don't even need real coaching experience, knows that when you spend a lot of time together, it can get frustrating and things like that. But if you make it an engaging and a fun activity, which is what we've done with them, they take it from there. They really do. The communication and things like that. The first week that I was there, our second scrim block was very, very quiet. Very quiet. Guys were tired. They weren't engaged. They weren't really paying attention as much as they were in the first block. So we threw in two or three things. I don't want to give away any strategies here, but we threw in 2 or 3 things, and it's been amazing since. That's communication-wise. We do a lot with them, and I think it's really effective. I think it's super effective. Just 2 weeks, and we've seen huge progress in these guys.
So let's say an argument breaks out in the middle of a scrim or after a game before the next one or something like that. How do you tend to approach those situations? Because one of the things I think people have historically said about CLG is that because they're very talented players, a lot of them have very big egos. Everybody talks about Double F's ego, right? So how do you deal with like big egos and people feeling like they have something to prove, or like, oh no, I'm right, how have you approached those kind of conflicts on the team?
Generally, I'm pretty loud. I can be a pretty loud guy, and there's no one in the house who can yell over me. I actually have not experienced any of this ego thing. I've met with players individually and as a team. I understand from the outside world, media loves drama, Reddit loves drama, and all those things, but I don't see it in these players, especially with some of the athletes that I have met and worked with, like in college. You want to talk about an ego, a guy who steps on a campus and knows that he's going to go to the NFL in a year and a half, that's an ego. Yeah. A guy who just streams in his spare time and has fun playing a video game, that is not an ego. Like he may be, and speaking to Peter specifically, he is incredibly confident in himself and his ability to do well, but when it comes down to it, all of my experience with him has been that he wants to win more than anything. So, ego's not really a big deal as far as arguments and scrim blocks goes and things like that. A lot of that was basically the expected outcome of the way that they were doing things. They did not have a good environment in which they could discuss problems and things like that. And so that was probably one of the first things that I did change when I was there. We totally changed the way that we discuss scrims and matches and even solo queue. We changed the way that we discuss those things, and now it's a much more positive environment because the opportunity to argue is no longer present within the team when we have meetings. There's no opportunity for them to voice their concerns about each other or do things like that. It's all controlled by the coaching staff, which is how it should be. So yeah, we definitely don't really have those issues anymore. Not to say that players won't get into arguments. I mean, that's something that's going to happen, and you deal with it as it comes up, and you would deal with it the same way that you deal with an argument between any two friends.
So right before I interviewed you, I interviewed Cop, who now coaches Gravity, and you guys are really fascinating for me to look at, because Cop obviously comes from several years of esports experience, has been coached by other people, knows a lot about the game. I understand you know a lot about League of Legends as well, but you, on the other side of things, you come from this traditional sports coaching background and that kind of thing. Do you feel, where do you think that this stuff is headed? Do you think that you will continue to be sort of an anomaly, or do you think that we'll see more people with traditional coaching backgrounds, and or maybe even, because I also know that Tony has stepped up from being an analyst to sort of like the game side coach. Do you think that that's the proper way to approach this, where you have somebody who maybe coaches a lot from a background of knowing how teams play and how they perform and how another team might react, and then you have a guy like yourself that are going to be sort of approaching this from like the background of knowing how teams for centuries now have been playing. I mean, where do you think all this is headed?
I think that depending on a lot of it is dependent on the talent pool, right? Like, I have experience with League of Legends and I have experience with traditional sports. That's probably more of a rare combination now than maybe 2 or 3 years in the future as this becomes, esports is still growing, and the bigger it gets, the more attractive the candidate field will be. So I think that in a lot of ways, what I've learned translates over pretty well. In football, like, you may see big flashy plays on the field, but from the macro level, football is a map-based game, just like League of Legends. There are objectives that you can trade and things like that. So having different ways to look at the game is valuable. And I know that esports, since it's kind of a closed system right now, doesn't value those things as much as other sports do. I mean, you'll have guys who coaching staff from football who will go and meet with basketball coaches, and they'll meet with soccer coaches and basically have conferences where they trade ideas and ways to look at different problems within an organization. So I think that without a doubt, you'll see more people from outside of esports come into the scene as teams become more open to it. CLG was the first in NA, as far as I know, who opened up their application process and said, hey, we just want talent. We just want talented guys to come work with us and help us foster our team. So yeah, I definitely, without a doubt, think that will be the way to go. And you saw it with Fnatic. Fnatic did the same thing. They opened up their application and said, hey, we just want talent. And they hired the guy who's a pro poker player, right? Yeah. And they've flourished under that system, and I hope that we do the same thing here. But without a doubt, I think you'll see more people from outside the scene come into it. Yeah.
Kind of my final question that I want to loop in based off of what you just mentioned, I think is really fascinating. I again, because I'm such an idiot when it comes to traditional sports, but I did not know that there were big coaching conferences that involved people from very different games. Do you think that there could be a situation in the future where we see coaches from League and Dota 2 and Counter-Strike and all these guys coming together? Would you think that would be effective?
We will be setting that up. I will be pushing hard for it because, yeah, absolutely. If all you ever hear is the ideas that are within your little bubble, you'll never be able to think outside of that. So, yeah, it's something. That's why we opened up applications for our analyst position and things like that. We are talking to a bunch of different people who have a bunch of different ideas on the game. And yeah, I would absolutely love that. Like, I know that Clemson staff, they take all the coaches, and 2 years ago they all flew to Texas and met with the Texas football coaches. Those two teams don't play each other. The thing is that you need to meet with minds who aren't in your scene. Right now, all the league coaches talk to all the league coaches. That's a little weird. What I would like is something like you just mentioned, where the league coaches speak to StarCraft coaches and things like that. Yeah, I would love to see things like that set up. And it's something that we're working with as far as our organization goes, to make sure that we're mimicking the way that other schools do, or not schools, but other organizations do things as far as sports is concerned, because they work. Yeah. They definitely work. And the more that we can take from other people and incorporate it into our organization, the better for us.
Yeah. I know I said that was my final question, but the last one is really, are you the missing link, the key that CLG's needed? Are you, because I mean they made one change on the roster side of things, but for you, it seems like you're the first maybe real thing that is coming in with a brand new and very different approach than perhaps has been there for a while. So do you believe in yourself and the fact that you could perhaps fix these issues that seem to have been around for a while?
Well, I'm definitely not Link. I have no 17-page document to offer you. But yeah, I think so. Like I said earlier in the interview, CLG has an embarrassment of riches, from the management all the way down to the players and the sports staff. Like, we've got really talented guys within the organization. And I have no doubt that if this is the team that I'm working with, holy cow, we can do great things. And ultimately, it's on me to make sure that we do those things, but I'm supremely confident that we have the ability to do so.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. Anything you want to say to any of the CLG fans out there, anybody out there at all?
Well, I do appreciate all the fans. Meeting people and getting into Twitter and things like that has been awesome. You know, I love when guys get in touch with me. The guy, Jarrett, who was on he was here at LCS and they did a champion competition. He was cool. And then obviously our sponsors, Razer, they provide all our like keyboards and mice and stuff like that. All these sponsors hooked me up when I first got to the house. So Razer was cool. iBuyPower gave us a sick PC, and it's got like the CLG logo on it. Thought that was awesome. Cloud HyperX, they let us borrow Andre, who is their social media guy, and he tries to make me look good. Yeah. Definitely appreciate them hooking us up like that. Cellucor and Twitch as well. Cellucor is my favorite sponsor because they're going to be helping us get into the nutrition and things like that, like hardcore with the guys. And obviously Twitch TV takes care of us incredibly well. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. Good to get insight into how you've been blending into the organization and the team. Looking forward to seeing, again, still very fascinating to me to see how a traditional sports background mixes in with the esports side of things. So thank you so much. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of our coverage of all things League of Legends at GameSpot.com/LOL.